Welcome to Streams of Income, hosted by best-selling author and entrepreneur Dr. David Powers, where we discuss streams of income, passive income, residual income, and even why there are dinosaurs and zombies in this intro. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready to dive in.
All right, folks, welcome to the Streams of Income podcast. This is going to be a fun one today. I've known Daniel Walker digitally for quite a while. We met in the Passive Income Engines group that I run, and we've gotten to know each other outside of that since then. And this is the first time we've met like face to face, though, and so that's pretty cool. And so Daniel's in all kinds of stuff, crypto, books, working for law enforcement. And so we are going to jump into everything. So Daniel, I tell you what, how about you just give us a quick intro of you and give us a rundown of your streams of income. I'm going to take notes, and that way I remember to double back on everything and have you talk about it more.
I got you. Well, thanks so much for having me on this show. I love what you do. I love the group that you run. I love that you're always having an open mind, looking for that next opportunity, and it's always just right in front of you. And that's what I think the kingdom calls us to do, is to be open to those witty inventions that are just right there in front of us. It's like God gives us a problem to solve, and instead of being mad about the problem being there, or instead of being frustrated that it's not the way we want it to be, he gives us the opportunity to step in and redirect ourselves and our lives so that propels us forward and takes other people with us, right? And so that's kind of my philosophy in life. Just a quick rundown. I started out as to my dad and mom, who was married for, goodness, probably close to 50 years before my dad passed a few years ago. And when I was 10 years old, he retired from a welding fabrication shop where he worked for 17 years, and he bought his first business. Now, truth be told, and this is kind of harsh on him, in 1987, with not more than a fourth grade education, he went from having a job to owning a job. And he thought he owned a business, but really he bought a job. And at 10 years old, and my brother was 12, if we weren't in school, we were out there hauling trash with him. And it brought us together in ways that we wouldn't be together if he had kept that welding job, right? So it was great things for our family, great things for his legacy and his life. And it built in me a certain way of thinking about business and about who I am. And, it taught us that the job has to be done. I remember burying my grandfather when I was 11, and we hauled trash that morning and went extra hard and extra fast so we could make it to the church on time for the funeral. So, I mean, that's not typical for today's generation to understand those kinds of things. I once had an employee call in sick because her cat died. And
I'm not a cat person, and so I guess I can laugh at that. But
yeah, I was like, well, I dug my own grandma's grave and pushed the dirt in on top of her and still went to work that same day. It's like it's a different mindset, the generation that I come from. But I started out that way. I got married when I was 20. I married my wife, Shelly. We've been married 28 years now. We've got 3 wonderful kids together. And I went to work as a plumber at a local franchise. And after 2 years...
I didn't know that about you.
I started out as a plumber, go figure, right? Her father-in-law was a manager for one of the franchises around town. And so I got to go clean drains, and that was my introduction into plumbing. But unfortunately, I didn't have an introduction into personality development. So I got fired. I got fired a couple years into that job, and it turns out I got fired a couple more times within the next 6 months. So I went from being one of the hardest workers, being fired from 3 jobs in 6 months with 2 little kids at home. I was the sole provider. So
is that what we call failing upwards?
It is, because God he instilled inside of me that I don't need to be working for those people anyway. It's like they are people with jobs, and I'm a person with a vision. And why would I want to suppress my vision to go to work for someone that has a job to manage me? Yeah,
exactly. So that's good.
I started my own business when I was 23 years old, a plumbing business, and I didn't know anything about plumbing. I was a drain cleaner. It was very hard to get going. It was very hard to step out there. And if it wasn't for the yellow pages, which is what I did, I just went through the yellow pages, calling every business in there, trying to solicit business. And I did $80,000 that first year in about 10 months of work And the first 3 months I did $0. And it taught me the lesson to just keep going. Because, I got hungry kids at home. I got a wife at home. I got stuff to do. And it doesn't matter if everyone says no, you got to keep going till you get a yes, and then start compounding those things over and over again. And I quickly transitioned from plumbing to utility construction. And that was where I took my hard work and ethics and my refusal to take no for an answer. That's where I really took it to the next level, because what I did is I found my way into a industry that has a lot of middle managers with a lot of headaches, and they have a small budget and a problem that needs to be solved that no one wants to solve. And I went in and I solved their problem for them for their budget, and I took that headache away from him completely. And so that they could not only use me in that office, but across the state, they changed things around their entire middle management area to go to more smaller contractors that are more nimble and can get more done. The time I stepped in there, their problem was production. Their in-house crews were doing one job every 2.5 days. Well, I came in there with the same size crew, and I did 2.5 jobs every day.
But there's some gold nuggets in there, because as far as business opportunities, just taking away somebody else's headache.
Yeah,
you find a way to do that, and you did it for the same budget. That's perfect.
Yeah, and so what happened is, after 6 months of doing that for them, I took my accounting into them and showed them that I'm actually losing money doing it for them that way, and I have to hand them back their headache that has been gone away from them for 6 months. Well, guess how hard they went in and fought to get my pay raise up where I needed it to be so I could make it profitable.
Yeah.
And then for 2 years, that's what happened is I brought on 10 employees, and we were turning and burning, making lots of money. I made my first $1 million by the time I was 25. And it was because of that. I had solved a problem in a way that no one else had considered solving it. And that's what my pastor had taught us, is that's the kingdom of God, is to step into what someone else sees as a problem and bring the light, bring the solution, bring the knowledge that they don't have, and deliver it to them on their terms. And you can't not be successful. That's kind of a recipe for success.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff.
But because this is 100% God, I got humbled in my next business experience, because after 2 years, I had built that into such a successful thing. I was no longer a small item on their budget. And some of the larger guys came in, and the contract went away magically and was handed to some longer term, bigger contractors. But I changed that industry from then on, because I looked at it that way, and I moved into a different business, and I put everything that I had made in this new business. And over 4 years, I lost over $2 million and was completely busted broke at 30 and started from absolute zero. And just went back to utility construction, did a different industry, a different niche, but same utility, and which is basically just ditch digging and putting stuff in the ground and burying it. It's really not hard. It has all its challenges, but it's not overcomplicated. And I did something different this time. I transitioned from having my workers do all the work, where I had to be in charge of everything, and I started using subcontractors that were way more qualified and way over experienced to do the jobs that we were doing. And what that allowed me to do is cut my overhead to zero. And then I could pick and choose which jobs I bid, knowing that the most mindsets around business and industry is lowest bid gets the job, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to pay their bills. They're trying to keep their guys busy. Well, I didn't have any overhead, so I was able to selectively pick the jobs that were more challenging to get done, or had a shorter due date. Maybe someone else was busy, didn't have the manpower to get the job done on time. Those more challenging things. And I found really quick that I found my way into another niche where they had this massive headache as a company, with no one with specialized knowledge to build their large projects, because they had a bunch of smaller guys running around, digging small ditches and putting stuff in. But when it comes to drilling, in downtown Oklahoma City, 40 feet deep, through all the intersections and all those things that you can't mess up on, or you'll be on the national news. They didn't have that contractor. So I stepped in, and I was that contractor for them for a while. And I'll tell you, that's really when I started developing a keen sense for God. Is I had I had raised from zero to hero in my early 20s, and I took credit for that because of my hard work and all that. And God humbled me. I mean, when I stepped into that next business, I never dreamed that I couldn't make that a success. And when you're starting over at 30, I just thank God for the will to not realize that I could fail again, because if it never entered my mind. It's like that was an anomaly that I failed. Like I need to go do it again. And through a lot of lessons, I finally was able to see that it's all a progression. It's like, yeah, you can go so far by yourself, but if you're not humbled in that success, you'll find your way to the bottom. You know, I'm reminded a lot of John. John 14, I believe. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life."
I've got that tattooed on my back, real big.
Is that right? Well, I'll tell you, the way that I read that is like, where does that come in context? Well, the chapter starts by Jesus saying, "Do not be concerned." And I'm like, okay, so don't be concerned because Jesus is the way. Well, when you start thinking about other names for Jesus, one of those other names is the Word, right? So the Word is the way. And if you read the rest of that chapter, Jesus talks about the Spirit of truth will come after he's gone. I'm like, okay, so if Jesus is the way, if the Word is the way, and I live the way, then that's pretty much the best life can be. It doesn't promise that we're not going to have storms hit us. It's not going to promise that we're going to be perfect. Everything's going to go the way we want it to go. But that's the way, right? Because it's called the way. But if we choose to go the truth, we're going to find the consequences of those actions we took against the Word. It's like when we know the way, the Word says to forgive, right? But we choose to hold on to that bitterness, we're going to find the consequences, the truth of not going the way.
Yep.
And in that case, time is our gift as we turn our face away from God. But Jesus is so miraculous because he says, whether you choose the way or you choose the truth, I am the life. All things are going to point you back to God. Right? And so that's kind of the way that I lived after I hit 40. Prior to 40, I was beating my chest because I was a tither and I was a Bible thumper, and I went to the right church, and my kids went to the right schools. You know, I was very proud of my Christendom, right?
Yeah.
But then I at 40, I got into a different business. I got into franchising.
Okay.
And I bought a business that I didn't know what I was doing. You
totally switched gears.
Yeah, it was haircuts. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I went from running a ditch digging company to doing haircuts, and it became very apparent very fast that I had no business skills whatsoever. I was much more just a problem solver and someone that liked to operate in the inefficiencies of business. You know, because I'm an outside the box thinker, I can walk into if someone grows up in a system, in a company to be a middle manager, he's going to have a very limited way of seeing things and understanding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when I come in with some kind of hybrid of the way the world actually works and some ability to communicate, you know, it feels like I'm a golden boy there in that scenario. But you put me in a group of hairstylists and wow, am I grossly inept in leading anyone to do anything. I tell you, I fired in the first 30 days. I believe the number's 30. I think I fired 30 people in 30 days. When I bought the two.
Was that a goal?
No, it was not. I was over my head, but you know, they wouldn't show up on time. They wouldn't dress appropriately. They wouldn't work the way they need to work to make the business work. You know, they wanted to come to work and sit on their phone if they weren't cutting hair. I'm like, that's not how this works at all. Like, you have a job, you're getting paid by the hour to perform work. And I need you to dress this way. I need you to carry yourself this way. This is the business. And that doesn't work in that line of business. I didn't know that, but that's in my mind, that's how it works. And so I had to reach out to a friend of mine who has over 600 employees in his business and just say, okay, I'm over my head. I'm losing everything. Tell me what I need to be doing. And to keep in mind, David, this business that I bought, I thought was breaking even, and it may have been the way the other guy was running it, but the way I was running it, I was losing $500 a day.
Wow.
And yeah, I ended up losing more money in the first year than what I paid for the business.
Oh, man. And this was one of the big name franchises?
Yeah, big name franchise. Largest in the world. And I was going broke and gross net. But it's such a great blessing that it happened that way, because I had to rise to the challenge. I had to go get training and coaching. I had to learn how to pay to be in masterminds. I had to learn how to pay to be a part of groups that, if nothing else, separated the people that are willing to pay from the people that aren't.
Yeah.
And that's a big separation. In some of those groups, that cost $10,000 a year to be in, you're in with a bunch of guys that are paid $10,000 a year to be in that group with those guys. So you've got 20 or 30 guys in there that are holding each other accountable, that are all pushing towards the same level of excellence in their life. They're all focused on faith and family. Those masterminds really came in and helped a lot in my walk from thinking I was successful in business to realizing I know nothing about business to actually getting it where it worked. A couple of years went by, things finally turned around. I discovered reading books, believe it or not, as an adult. I didn't know that was still a thing, but, it turned out I was 44 years old and it's okay to read books. Well, this is what I found, David, is once I began reading books and understood what they are, you look to be in your mid-50s, looking good. And
I turn 50 next month.
Okay, 50 next month. Great. Happy birthday. I'm betting that if you lived the first 50 years of your life and then you wrote a book about it and you contained everything that you could tell to the next generation, all your wisdom, I bet you if you put that in a book, I could read that book in about 4 hours. Well, guess what? I just gained 50 years of experience and knowledge hitting the highlights without going through all the mundane and all the lessons. I get the recap version of it by reading your book. So a lot of those books are written by guys a lot older than 50. So if you start reading books that are, throughout history, 100 years old, 50 years old, 200 years old, 400 years old, you start getting a broader understanding of the cycles of thinking that we all go through, right? When I started reading the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer, which, I don't recommend that be your first book to read.
But read it in the original Greek.
Right. But eventually you understand that all that book is telling you is that you create your own torment with your mind. The stories that you tell yourself to give yourself that adrenaline rush or that pain or that suffering is where life is. That's the experience of life, is that we as an observer of God's creation, creation is just simply the universal laws interacting with each other. And then how we judge those things creates our life. What stories we tell ourselves about that meaning this, that meaning that, it creates an emotional connection to it, which gives us a chemical dump into our bloodstream, which makes us feel a certain way. And it's true for all of us. So that means that I'm going to experience everything differently than you are. No matter how closely we are related, no matter how closely our perspectives are, our context and our trajectories are always going to be separating at some point. And if we get tied to this, if I get tied to this conception I have of you being a certain way, and then that you never agreed to or knew about, and then you just behave you, and then I feel bad about you being you, and then we're in conflict, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right? But if you take that kind of thinking to that kind of logic to business, which is what I did, was I was able to say, okay, I've got 40 years of life experience, 30 years of business experience at the age of 40, and I'm failing miserably because I'm not connecting to these employees.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I?
Were you able to rescue the hair salon?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I exited after 6 years. I exited profitably, and it was running great. But I had to learn the valuable lessons of how to delegate, how to grow and develop myself, how to allow other people to be their version of them. and then find a way to implement those into my need for that job. And that's what I'm building now. One of the companies I'm building right now is called Pronoia. You've heard of paranoia, right? Which is this fear that everything's out to get you. Well, Pronoia is the exact opposite. It's this faith that everything is working for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what I'm building is a company specifically meant to train franchisees, maybe small business owners, but specifically franchisees, to teach them how to invest into their employees, because most franchises are going to have entry-level employees. I mean, the vast majority of them. I had the advantage because my franchise required a license, so there's a little bit of professionalism there that separates. It's like, at least I know they're willing to go to school for a year and pass a test, which is the delineator from those that are not, right? And so I learned a lot through those processes, and God's been very fortunate because I've been able to chase a bunch of other passive income streams along the way. I've stayed away from real estate mainly because I don't want to be a landlord, and I've met too many sleazy people in real estate early on in my life to think that that's who I want to be associated with. And that's at my own detriment. I think I could have been a lot further along in my journey if I had not held that bias. But if I had not held that bias, I maybe never would have seen that you can be in real estate and not be that kind of person. But also to be aware that there are people in that industry that are that way. Just like every other industry, for sure. What is it drinking?
Oh, yeah. It's a Bang. I limit myself to one energy drink a day, and but it's no sugar, so it keeps me off of sodas.
Okay, great. Love it. How long have you been on those?
I don't know. About a year, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep, that and coffee in the afternoon.
Coffee in the afternoon. I love it.
Yep.
Well, cool. So what do you think?
The hair salon, what happened after the hair salon? So you exited that, and is that bringing us up to now, or is there more stuff between then and now?
No. So I exited the hair salon about 2 years ago. I bought an oil well down in Texas that has not produced yet. It was a field that wasn't drilled yet. And we invested into the early field and then reinvested into the later field, and none of it has produced yet. It's been about 3 years. But we're still optimistic and faithful that it'll get there. We also
I've been watching that new show, Landman, on TV.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
It's educating me on the TV version of the oil fields.
It sounds like a really good show. It really does. But I also put some money into crypto there. I also put money into local businesses. So when I had a lump sum of money, I went to the church, talked to some of the successful people there at church, and just asked what was available within the community. It's like, who has a successful business that's honorable, that needs some cash, that will pay a good return. So I was able to put some money in there as well and get a decent return, as well as help out a family member of the church. So that's pretty much where I'm at today. Since leaving the hair salons, I've read a ton of books, and I've reread a ton of books. I've gotten very familiar. I went back and read the books that got me on the journey in the first place. And they're whole new books. I mean, I've read Think and Grow Rich probably, 50 times, but I hadn't read it in the last 3 years. I read it again last week, and it's a whole other book. It's like I never read it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
a good question, though. In addition to the Bible, what book would you, if you recommend somebody read one book? I mean, the Bible first and then another book, what would the book be?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm sorry I cannot answer it with one book. There's too many facets to life, but there's 7 books that will take you on a journey from zero to hero. And the first book is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clausen. And this book, it's a narrative book. It's a story book. It doesn't read like some of those other books will later in the series, but it basically teaches every person the principles of money. And no matter where you come from, who you are, you should read this book every year of your life, just to keep you focused and refocused on the pitfalls and the traps of money, and where you can take the interest that you earn from your money and put it to work so it can earn interest as well. Because that's really when wealth starts building, right?
That's a good book. I read that one on the Dave Ramsey recommendation.
Okay, great. Well, once you learn how the principles of money, the next thing you need to understand is how that money is tied to your thoughts. And the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill introduces you to that concept. And it walks you through the practical, applicable steps that you can take to apply to your mind so that your life can enact those principles that you learned in that first book. But once you understand that your mind is tied to your money, you really need to understand your mind on a different level. And that book is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this is the first time that I've ever been introduced into that voice inside my head and what it is and what it is not. This book goes very in depth to that. And I'm an Audible person, so I listen to these books. I don't actually physically hold them to read them. That's the way I like to do it. As law enforcement now, as you know, a lot of my time is driving. So I'll throw in a book and I'll drive across the state for 4 hours listening to books. And that's kind of how I absorb everything.
Oh man, you ever? I wonder how that's affecting the transports. I mean, I assume they're listening to the book too. I mean, you never know how you might be changing lives by that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was listening to, my favorite book is The Count of Monte Cristo. I think there's so many life lessons in that book. And I was transporting a prisoner and he loved it. I mean, we were 3 hours into it and he hated to get out of the car to go to the jail. What's funny is the next week I was taking him back and it's a 52-hour book. And so I was still listening to the book and he was so excited to get in and listen to the other part of it.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it definitely creates some conversation opportunities when you're listening to books that challenge their way of thinking in a positive way, and it's been really impactful. But Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and that leads us to the next book. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and this book is so powerful because now that you know about money, you know that it's tied to your mind, you know how your mind works. This is really when you get in depth to that voice inside your head and learn how to control it. You know, the Bible talks about taking every thought captive. Well, that means that before that talking voice inside your head has a chance to put language to your feeling, to your expression, that's the tongue that you're living and dying by. It is that moment of application of language to the expression. And Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, really gets into that nitty gritty of what language do you want to be hearing yourself talk to, right?
Okay.
And then the next book is called The Big Leap by...
that one's got a permanent spot on my shelf.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like once you get those first 4 books laid out, read, and understood, where do you want to apply all that knowledge? Well, you want to apply it to your upper limit. Whatever is holding you back from getting through the next level is where you want to apply all that knowledge and application. And so the last 2 books are really just practical books to kind of get in there and work through that upper limit over and over again. And so is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah, read that one too. That's good.
It's phenomenal because, you know, you think Atomic Habits, you think the bombs and the big and massive stuff. And like, no. Atoms, very small little habits, just small little steps, the think tortoise and hare, the very small things that you're not paying attention to, the assumptions you're making, that's where great gains are made in your life, right?
Yep.
And then the very last book, and it's not last because it's least, I promise you, Jim Quick, Kwik, wrote a book called Limitless.
Haven't read that one, but I've listened to his podcast some.
Man, he introduces you to your brain as a supercomputer and gives you the programming code so that you can speed read, so you can have eidetic memory, that you can function at a high level of focus at any moment in your life on repeat and even make that the default mode.
Yeah.
And it really, those 7 books applied through the spiritual understanding of the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know how life can get any more handed to you on a silver platter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to put this list of books in the show notes too, because I mean, that's a perfect read for the next year for somebody as we enter the next year.
Absolutely, especially if someone's stuck in their life and they feel like they got gypped early in life, they didn't get the education they wanted, or they feel like they've maybe made a wrong decision and spent 20 years in a wrong career. You know, those things can be fixed just by reading a few books. Your life can change at any moment. You're not tied to being the same person you were yesterday by anything other than momentum. That's it. That's the only thing that drives you.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, before I forget this too, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
You know, I'm on X as at Daniel Walker MED. You know, my email address is daniel@danielwalkermedia.com. And even though there's no website, danielwalkermedia.com, but that is my email address. And Daniel Walker at Daniel Walker MED is my Twitter handle, and I'm also on Facebook. Those are really my two main platforms that I'm active on every day. I love interacting with people. I love helping people. You know, are we tired? What's our time limit here, Dave? I didn't talk about that.
Oh, we got some time. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and dig into something if you want to, because I want to ask you about that the redemption coin also before we quit.
Yeah.
And your book.
So, yes, one of the first things I did when I got out of Great Clips is I thought I wanted to be a podcast guy, a face on the internet type guy. And so I hired the right people and they had me write a book. And I tell you, I wasn't happy with the way the book was written. So I rewrote it and gave it to them. They published it. I was really not happy with the way that went down. But guess what? Yeah, I got a book out. And
it's a business card.
It's a business card. That's what it is. You know, it's not written well. It's not articulated well. It's literally today's equivalent of excellence in what happens, right? And I don't regret it. Don't take me wrong. Yep. I mean, John Maxwell has written over 100 books, and he'll tell you his first book was horrible as well. You know, so I'm no John Maxwell by any stretch, but I have taken that step out there now, and I know what the process is, right? I understand how simple it is to actually write a book and get it out there and have, you know, I'll tell you, for me, the moment is because in my book, I wrote about suicide because that's something I used to struggle with. And in the book, I wrote that having suicidal thoughts is not about wanting to die. It's a dashboard light telling you that there's no hope in your thinking. And I saw that quote randomly on a Facebook post that I had no association with. Yeah. You know, they were not friends of friends. They were just random people in New York that I'm in Oklahoma that we never met, never would meet. And they're quoting my book to me and telling, or to the world, really telling the world what that did for them in the moment.
Wow.
You know, so that was pretty powerful stuff. But I look forward to where that's going to take me in the future, knowing now that that's out there and available to us as an option. I got into crypto 2013 probably, and
early days.
Yeah, I didn't pretend to understand it. Yeah, I was buying Bitcoin at $3,000, and yeah.
Oh man.
And I'll tell you, I think it was 2018, 2019. I don't remember the exact year, but we were down in Mexico, and that's really when I felt like God spoke to me and says, "Hey, get in now." So I bought a bunch of Ethereum at 450. I bought a bunch of Bitcoin at 16,000, and was able to make almost 7 figures profit on that first bull run back then. Still not having any clue what I was doing. It was just
that's the simplest way to do it, man. Just buy it and hold it.
Yeah. And what's funny is I exited that and then ended up getting scammed out of most of it. So easy come, easy go. It is.
Yeah. I think we know some mutual stories on some of that.
Yeah.
we won't say that in case there's legal action, but
yeah. So I just took it as as a lesson, and I don't even consider it an expensive lesson, considering I know what God has in front of me. And if that small amount of 6 or 7 figures is going to get me upset, then I'm not ready for the 8, 9, and 10 figures. And that's really
it's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, it's just the way I look at it. It's like, well, if I could go back and undo that, I would. But since I can't, I'm not going to worry about it. And know that whatever the devil steals from me is ever paid back to me 7 times. So I'm not even worried about the interest. God will get it to me when I get it there. It's no big deal. And that's kind of the way that I have to function in order to keep going, right? But I did get familiar with the Bitcoin and Ethereum and the first layers, which I'm not a technical guy by any stretch. I'm not even very organized, to be honest with you. but understanding Web3 finally has brought into understanding what I was learning back in 2019, 2020 during that bull run, is that the .com era is over. The internet era is over. I don't know how much longer there's going to be an internet, but it won't be very much longer because of Web3. Right now, you go to google.com to interface with their action.
Yep.
And so with smart contracts, you can put the HTML code in the smart contract and go directly to their site, apart from the browser and apart from all that stuff. You can go directly to, and that way your data is traveling with you. It's not going through Google and then to a site. So Google can see all your data and extrapolate from it and feed back to you what you want to feed back. Web3 is, I'm going to go straight to you, David. You're going to have all my information while you need it. And then I'm taking it with me when I leave. And it's all on the blockchain. So it's all completely transparent. Everyone knows everything. And there's nothing to hide. There's no scams at that point. Once you get past all the Wild West, lack of regulations.
And that's going to transform so many industries. I mean, just like, I don't know, thinking about real estate, it's something I've looked into, but just like having to buy title insurance, things like that. Once the titles and taxes are on the blockchain, I mean, there's no insurance needed. It's right there.
100%. Absolutely.
And that's just a small example. I mean, it's going to transform a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's changing the world in the same way that, in 1992, when I was in high school, they talked about how the internet was going to change the world. And it didn't relate because there was no imagination as a 16, 17-year-old kid what changed the world even meant. I didn't know how the world was, let alone how it was going to change. But now, as I'm approaching 50 myself, and have the context to understand how much it did change. I mean, from 1995 to 2025 is 30 years. It changed a lot more in those 30 years than it did from 1965 to 1995.
Yeah.
And it changed a lot more than 1965 to 1935, right? So we're accelerating through our 30-year cycles. So when I say that it's going to change the world, think about when there are no more jobs. I mean, Elon Musk is coming out with the Optimus robot, and they said that the last summer was the last robotless summer. Yeah. I don't think Optimus is going to be out by this summer, but China already has an army of different humanoid robots that are going to be released soon. And so dishes being cleaned at home now by robots, yards being mowed, weed eaters. I mean, all the things that us dads have done our whole lives, we finally get relief from. All those things that our moms have done their whole lives, they get reprieve from in home. And they're not going to have the jobs to go to because the robots are doing the jobs, right? I mean, robots are cutting hair, robots are doing everything.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a Web3 presence, and you don't have any understanding of what Web3 is, it's like it's essentially the internet of the future.
Yeah.
So when you create a coin, right now they're calling them meme coins, and it's a joke, and it is. It's don't invest in any money that you think you might need one day because it's a scam, right? But at the same time, they're not going away. So some of these meme tones are going to become iconic over time. Yeah. The one that got my attention was Rizmas, Rizzmas, and I was like, "Ooh, that's catchy." It's like that's going to catch my attention. It's going to catch a lot of other people's attention. And then I looked up what it meant. I'm like, "Oh, charisma."
Yeah.
So it's not even a dirty term. It's not even it's not even anything controversial. It's like, oh well, I said I can imagine maybe not this year that catching on, but it's going to come back this year a couple of times and give a pump. And I ran a few $100s up to a few $1,000s, and then watched it all go away.
Yeah.
But I know, but if you start watching market caps, and it goes from a 5 million to a 80 million market cap, and you start paying attention to those percentage of the developers that still hold some of the coins, because they're going to crash as those developers unload their coins. Those prices are going to crash, but that's just a reach for liquidity. And lets new people come in. And so you look at the number of wallets that are holding the token, and it goes up $10,000 or $20,000, and the percentage of tokens held by the developers goes down. It's like, well, the more times that goes through that cycle, the more longer term that project is.
Yeah.
So even though I might have bought 30 million tokens and ended up not even making money this year, where's it going to be in 10 years? And so that was kind of my thinking of what the tokens could be, what the meme coins could be, would be a future play. It's like owning Google.com before Google got there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but in the current environment, I made two meme coins. My first two meme coins. One was called Sin, with a tagline is, "Have you paid for your sin today?" and I want them to actually go through the cycle, because I'm not going to sell any of my coins, but I only have a few million coins of my own coin. The pump.fun, which is the website I use to create the meme, they made like 1 billion tokens and kept 970 million of them. I mean, they're going to extrapolate any liquidity that comes into the token for the next till they get out of it, whatever they need to get out of it. It's like they're the ones that put the liquidity in it, I guess, and that's how they justify doing that. So and I wanted to make that apparent to you and your listeners that it's like the Hawk Tua meme coin that got rug pulled the other day. I'm not so sure that was her insiders that did that dumping. It's most likely, if she did it the same way I did it on pump.fun, it's most likely the developer of the coin. We're just punching buttons, and they're the ones that whoever's operating that system is the one making all that money. At least that's the way.
And what happened with her, maybe that'll uncover some of this so that other people will see what's going on,
Yeah. But as more people bought in and continue to buy in, she can make that comeback if she spins it well and gets out there and doesn't hide. It doesn't make it worse, which is possible. It's possible.
Oh man, and me and you have seen how that happens in some of these DeFi projects.
Yeah.
As soon as something bad happens, they hide. Everybody knows they did something wrong, whether they did or not.
Absolutely. And so I don't write her off as being wrong in what she did, because I don't know that it was actually her that did it. Because it's based on my experience of making those coins myself. The other coin that I made was called Redemption.
Yeah, that's the one I saw you post about recently.
And that's the one I think can really go somewhere, because I have a heart for nonprofits, right? And so if we have a project called Redemption, and the profits that are not even the profits, the liquidity that's put into those coins, if we all hold them, the only people taking liquidity out would be me, where I would invest in a local project that is a business that is also ran as a nonprofit, but it's going to generate a profit. Whether that be an RV park for halfway house type thing, something that's ministry focused that also makes a profit, and those profits are then put back into the liquidity pool. So that, maybe you got 1 million of my tokens and you put $10 in it, but after a few years, it's worth 18. And guess what? You're having a hard time and you need your $18. Well, guess what? It's there for you, and you can take that and do it. And when you want to come back, you can. If you don't, you don't. You know what I'm saying? And that level of involvement, to me, allows for us to bypass the giving of the church or the giving of the taxes and welfare. It is direct. Hey, you got an extra $2? Well, I've got 100 other friends that have $2 as well.
Yeah.
that'll help me get through the month. Can you help me out? And I think that's going to change. That's going to change the way that we minister to people.
Yeah. Now, what blockchain can people buy these 2 coins on? The Sin and the Redemption.
Solana.
Okay. Solana is up and coming. I've got some Solana coin that I'm just holding on.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Gary coin on Solana?
No.
So Gary, he is big into camels. So all the NFTs are the camel tower, I think is his NFT. You should have him on your show. He's a phenomenal guy. He's based in Austin, recently from Puerto Rico. And he has an entire community on Solana. And so he was my introduction to having your own coin, building your own community through the coin.
Yeah.
Really showing me how Web3 is going to be functioning as I look at it as a 3D internet. Right now, I see the internet as 2D. It's a connection between me and a server through another server, right?
Yeah.
So it's literally a straight line with 3 dots, where Web3 is so much decentralized. You're going in different directions all the time, and they're not related to each other. They're completely separate. Yeah. And so I think of Web3 as more of a 3D representation of the two-dimensional internet.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're probably blowing a lot of minds here with some of this stuff, but I mean, if nothing else, though, I want people to get in touch with you, and like if it interests them, get in touch with you, dig into it, and I mean, people may be building new businesses that you and I haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly. It's such a great time to be here. It's such a huge opportunity, and it's not too late. I mean, Bitcoin's been around 15 years. It's just getting started. I mean, that's do not take profits in Bitcoin. Buy all the Bitcoin you have, period. And wait 10 years and then tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Well, hey, one of the things I wanted to point out too that didn't come up, it came up before the recording started, but one of the things that you doing well in business, everything has afforded you is the law enforcement stuff. I mean, you've got the ability to do, it's not a high paying profession, and you started out volunteering. I mean, nobody gets rich doing law enforcement, not legally. And, but it's afforded you the ability to do something that's fun and get you out of the house, and you're affecting other people's lives. So tell us kind of what you told me in the intro about how you got into the law enforcement stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, my son went to join the Army when he was 18. And when he came back a few years later, he had a wife. And we had met her for the first time when I moved home.
Did the Army issue him a wife?
Right. Well, they did a great job if they did, I'll tell you that. She was a deputy at the county. And so I joined the search and rescue team to sort of hang out with her a little bit, be involved in some trainings and whatnot. And eventually that worked into me going through academy and being a reserve officer. And as a reserve officer, I'm required to volunteer 8 hours a month to kind of maintain my licensing. And one of the months I was volunteering, I just started noticing how shorthanded they were, and that they really needed some really more full-time volunteers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no interest in being a cop. I have no interest in going and busting bad guys and policing people and making them mind and all that stuff. It's like, that's for my earlier version of myself. Right now, I just want to give back to my community and serve the people that are putting their lives in danger. And I understand that there's some danger involved with me too, and I need to be trained and equipped to handle anything that they have to handle, because I'll be there as their backup. But I definitely want to be the backup to the backup, not necessarily out there on the front lines. And so I was able to go to the sheriff's department and talk to them and say, hey, listen, I have the time to donate, but I don't really want to donate 3 days a week. So if you guys can get me on the payroll, I'll come in part-time as a reserve and help. Yeah. So I do transportations. I literally they're either at a county jail or at a prison, and I take them from one to the other and back and forth. And most of the prisoners are just happy to sit in the car and listen to my book that I'm listening to. And it sparks some good conversations. I'm careful not to necessarily minister to them directly, because the last thing I want to do is have some guy in handcuffs and me sitting there preaching at him like I'm going to save his life. That's
Hit
not
him over the head with a Bible.
Yeah, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. But if I can speak some hope and speak some wisdom into their life, or get them to ask me some questions that maybe helps reset some things. There was one guy the other day that had he just opened up about his relationship with his dad. He just his dad had attacked his mom when he was a kid, and he said, I can forgive him, but I can't forget it. And I said, why do you think that sounds like forgiveness if you can't let it go? He goes, well, I just won't be bitter about it. And I said, well, let me just, it sounds like you're bitter. So I can just see it in your face. Mm-hmm. You're upset because you're reliving that again. And I said, let me ask you, what are you in here for? He goes, well, I hit my wife.
Oh.
And I said, well, you're a Christian. You've already told me that. So the thing that you judged, God's showing you some humility here, and now you've got some perspective to maybe not judge him so harshly.
Yeah.
And man, his head exploded when he saw that he had judged his dad with no context. It's like, no, there's no reason for his dad to go after his mom. I get that. But to not understand the pressures of being a father, of money pressures, of being a husband, I don't know what his friendships were like. There's so many things and so many pressures that are pushing in on these people maybe his mom was pushing the right buttons, looking to get smacked around. I mean, sometimes that happens. There's just not enough information for a small child to make those determinations, but they do. And then they shape their lives around those judgments. And if we're not sensitive to people in their suffering and what they're going through, and give them second, third, 15th chances, just like we all need ourselves, then we miss the chances to minister to them and really show them the love of God.
Yep.
And that's really what it's all about. I feel blessed to live the life I've lived. I feel blessed to make the mistakes I made, because at the end of the day, I've learned a lot of lessons, and at the end result, God's allowed me to have a great attitude about those lessons and what they've learned and what I've learned from them, so I can teach them to other people.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, and like you say, doing, those failures, failing your way up, doing what God's told you to do. And now you're in a position where you're helping people, in many different ways. That's what we're called to do.
It's fun. It's really a great way to live life. I look forward to the robots getting here so we can all stop working. And then I look forward to the standard of morality and excellence that God will bring as a standard, for the country as we move forward into the next generation.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I mean, no matter how you feel about politics, just next year, it's going to be a lot of change. And I'm just excited about just to see what happens. I mean, it's going to be interesting what happens next year.
Yeah. And it may not be the way that we want it to be.
Yeah.
I have been a staunch Republican my whole life, like ultra conservative. And I'm no longer that way.
Yeah. That's the way I am. I grew up Republican, and I'm like a just libertarian, get off my yard kind of guy now.
Is that right?
Just leave me alone.
Well, I am seriously considering switching to be a Democrat.
Yeah.
And running for Congress as a Democrat in Oklahoma, which every county votes red every time.
Oh, yeah. I saw that map when it came out.
Yeah. But I truly believe that it is, if we want to shape the country, we have to get involved with the other side of the politics, not our side of the politics.
Yeah.
It's like we have to say, obviously they've taken it too far, right? It's like whatever their original missions were, it's disconnected from where they are today.
Yeah.
But I don't believe John Kennedy would approve of the liberal platform that exists today. And he was a Democrat, right?
Yep.
Now, Lyndon Johnson might. But I think that the Democrat Party, look who they're running, look who's shaping up to run next. It's like there is no leadership, no practical, logical leadership there. And if we can take some good Republican people that love God and are level-headed and common sense oriented and get them to go to a Democratic side of the aisle, and argue for the just like a lawyer has to defend the guilty party, go over there and represent them well in their logic. Go over there and represent them, see what God sees when he looks at them, and represent them from that perspective against your own side, and allow your people from the right to support you in that.
Because I mean, we get some good Christians on both sides, and because the way we feel now is we don't trust any of them.
None.
I mean, even the party that we might ascribe to, we don't trust them even.
No.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'll tell you, I study history, and what I see today is very, very easily could be attributed to what was pre-Hitler Germany. If you're familiar with brown shirts and you're familiar with the Night of Long Knives, and you understand the larger historical plays that happened there, it's like you can see the writing on the wall in America. If we let the pendulum swing too far, too fast, we can go from having the nightmare that we've had the last few years to making it much, much worse in the next few years.
And we know from experience, history repeats itself. So
it's a cycle. But the only way it stops is if each of us chooses the way instead of the truth.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's the last question I always ask everybody is because we talk about different streams of income. If money wasn't an issue, period, you knew you'd be fine doing this stream of income, what would be your dream stream of income? You can do it for the rest of your life, and you think you'd be happy with that?
Oh, it's building curriculum, teaching people how to think differently, and helping them understand that it's the narrative of their life. It's like if you look at, I think of a rifle. If you look at your pinpoint where you've got that gun or that rifle resting, and then you look at the butt and it angles and pivots on that first point, one is context, one is perspective, and you're going to hit whatever you're aiming at. So no matter what event happens, whatever your perspective is, and the context through which you form that narrative, you're going to hit a result. And there's going to be a trajectory. It's going to be an unfolding over time. But this context with this perspective is this result every time. And if you're the kind of person that judges the results as being unfair, unjust, all the other stuff, then guess what? You're refusing to accept that context and that perspective yields that result, and it's just going to repeat. It's like trying to make a cake recipe and not following the recipe every time, wanting it to be perfect, and it's just not going to work, right? And so I think that is my greatest source of value that I have to offer the world. I think that is 100% God-given. I don't claim to have all the answers for everything. I just ask a lot of questions and help people reframe the way that they're looking at it. Because for me, it was about depression. I suffered from depression for a long time. And it wasn't until I realized that it was me creating that depression as a distraction, because I didn't know how to face those questions that I didn't know how to face about myself and the world and all those things, right? And so when I started asking myself, it's like, why am I enjoying this distraction of depression right now? And kind of forcing myself to accept that it's me causing this over and over again, so I can exist in that and be comfortable in sucking or whatever it was, right? And so once I realized that, I could see myself putting together these illustrations that weren't actual or factual in any capacity, so I could get that payoff. And then I laughed at myself, and I haven't been able to be depressed since. It ruined my whole life.
Well, that's good. I tell you what, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of your mind next. I mean, whether it's the next book, the next coin, whatever, it's going to be interesting, whatever it is.
I appreciate it very much.
Well, I appreciate you joining me, spending some time with me, because I know you're a few hours earlier than me in Oklahoma.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm in South Carolina.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Well, man, thanks for joining us, and I'll put everything in the show notes and get some people in touch with you. Maybe we'll get some people buying some coins,
That sounds
different
great,
stuff.
man. I love it. Look forward to
Yeah.
interacting with you in the future.
Hey, everybody, I just wanted to mention one last time before you go. If you ever want to do any brainstorming, let's say you listen to one of these podcasts and you thought to yourself, Dave, that was an amazing guest. And your interview questions were so thoughtful and introspective and inspiring. It made me think about something new, but I don't have anybody to talk to about this. Well, that's what I'm here for. If you ever want to do a brainstorming session, I don't charge the same price for those that I do my regular coaching sessions, because the coaching sessions are that's like a long-term thing. I work with people and hold their hand and tons of homework, stuff like that. But if you ever want to just get on a call and do some brainstorming, I love doing those. I love meeting new people in different occupations, things that I don't know anything about, and have them tell me all their secrets, all their goals, all their dreams, and we brainstorm new income ideas. And you know what I really like? Let me tell you a secret. One of the things I really like doing is helping people see how they can make additional income or create new income streams based off of things they're already doing. In other words, don't add another job. Don't take on another part-time job. Don't add 15 side hustles to your existing income streams, or stream if you're possibly in a full-time W-2 job. What I like doing is brainstorming with folks. It's like my specialty, and helping them figure out how to make money, more money, new money, sometimes passive money, with things they're already doing. And so if you want to do a brainstorming session on something like that or anything else, I mean, I don't mind talking about anything. Getting your kids into entrepreneurial stuff, trying to work with your spouse because they hate entrepreneurial stuff, whatever you want to talk about, click the link below. It should be in the show notes. I say below. I'm not sure how you're watching this, but it is in the show notes, whether those are on the side, below, or somewhere else. But check the show notes. There's a link in there for the $99 brainstorming sessions. And, if you want to, feel free to email me. Ask me if it's the right fit for you before you book, whatever you want to do. But just be sure to get the help you need to make sure that you're able to take those next